Hi, my name is Brad Fuller. I'm a member of OLLI. I've been a member since 2016. And I also teach and volunteer at OLLI, and I also take courses at OLLI. And I've been asked to do a short presentation about my experience with polio. I was born on January 16th, 1951, and on June 12th, 1952, 16 months later, I contracted polio and spent the next 9 months of my infantile life in a hospital, 4 months of which I was in an iron lung. So my experience with polio has been pretty much from the very beginning of my consciousness. As a matter of fact, my very first memory is getting treatment in a salt bath with a nurse who had me in the salt bath with her, and I had my hands on her shoulder and I was facing her, and she was asking me to kick my legs in order to strengthen them. Polio is something that people my age are very familiar with in terms of the fear that it engendered during their youth and as they were growing up. But polio is an ancient disease. There are images of it on tombs in Rome, in Greece, and in Egypt that show that people in ancient times suffered from polio. The very first epidemic that occurred in the United States was in 1894. Polio existed in the United States before 1894, but it wasn't really recognized as something in terms of a specific disease. The largest epidemic year in the United States occurred in 1952, which happened to be the year that I got polio. And during that year, 53,000 American children and adults got polio, and roughly 3,000 of them died. I was one of the lucky ones in that I lived, but the effects of polio were very different for each individual. For most polio people who survive, there is some sort of paralysis that occurs or some infirmity with respect to your limbs. In most instances, the polio goes across your body. In my instance, it goes from my right shoulder all the way down to my hand and then across my body to my left leg, which is my weakest leg. So for most polio survivors, it's difficult to use orthotic appliances in order to navigate and to get around. Fortunately for me, at the age of 70, I'm able to get around with a full leg lock knee brace that I get. And it makes it awkward for me to walk, but it's a safe way to walk. One of the things that I'd also like to mention is, as an infant and as I was growing up, the treatment for polio was really to encourage as much vigorous exercise as possible. But while I was in the hospital and shortly after, the treatment was hot packs and exercise. And actually, polio was a disease in the United States that created physical therapy as a field because it became necessary for so many people to receive physical therapy treatments. There were no other real treatments for polio. Polio was something that terrified neighborhoods. When an infant or an adult acquired polio, what would happen in that neighborhood is the home would be quarantined. And the fear that came every summer was real. People were told not to go to pools, theaters, restaurants. People wore masks. No one really knew where polio came from. It wasn't really until the early 1980s that it was discovered that polio was transferred from individual to individual via waterborne feces. So that's something that most people can't relate to, but in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, many people in the United States did not have treated water to drink. And that's something that may have been one of the main reasons why polio was so virulent in rural areas, like an area that I grew up in, Northeast Pennsylvania. But in my opinion, as a polio survivor, my hero of the 20th century, among so many other heroes that many of us have, is Jonas Salk, who came up with the first dead virus vaccine that saved thousands and thousands and thousands of lives when it was found to be safe and effective in 1956, 4 years after I contracted polio. Following the Jonas Salk vaccine, Albert Sabin came up with an oral vaccine, and that's the one that many people remember with the Sabin on Sundays drives where you got the vaccine on a sugar cube, and both of them had boosters that were necessary, just like we have with the COVID right now. And that's one of the things about vaccines that's always troubled me. I had a career in the healthcare field. I taught at a university with healthcare policy, and I've always been just staggered by the ignorance that many people have regarding vaccines. Asheville happens to be a mecca for vaccines. So for me, in closing, I would like to say, take your vaccines. They are a much more effective way of dealing with any medical problem if they're available for that particular disease. Take your vaccines. They're safe, they're effective, and God knows my parents would have been happy to have one in 1952. Thank you.